Hello and welcome. I'm Brandy Miller, Editorial Director of the Watcher Post EU. Today we're unpacking a deceptively simple yet deeply political question. Who pays for Europe? This summer, the Commission put forward its plan for the next MFF. With it came the EU's new Own Resources package. Until now, the EU budget has largely depended on contributions from member states. But the new proposal introduces a major shift. The EU would begin raising its own revenue by levying EU taxes, moving away from its traditional reliance on national coffers. The new mix of revenues would come from emissions trading, carbon border tax, e-waste, corporate contribution, and excise duties, namely tobacco. Ultimately, this will shape how the Union will repay its common debt, fund future priorities, as well as distribute costs between governments, businesses, and consumers. To explore all of this, I'm joined in the studio by Dr. Eoin Drea, who is Senior Researcher at Wilfred Martin's Center for European Studies. Welcome.
Thank you.
As well as Dr. Antonios Nestoras, who is Executive Director of the European Policy Innovation Council. Welcome. And joining us online remotely is Professor Fernando Pinto Hernández, who is economist of Juan University in Spain. Welcome. All right, to kick off, I'd like to start with a bit of the political side of what's at stake with the new Own Resources package. I was wondering if you could speak a bit about the political implications of this. Namely, is this the EU's way of sending a political message to member states as well as to businesses and consumers?
Well, I think, yes, obviously the EU budget is deeply political, but I think what we're seeing with the current Commission proposals is how it's going to be incredibly difficult for the Commission to achieve most of its aims in a political context which is becoming more and more divisive. And I think we see that particularly with the own resources. I think, you have many member states who are facing very tight budgetary conditions in their own countries, and obviously they will not want to increase their contributions to the EU budget for the next period. So that's the context we're now facing at a national level. And then as well, on the other hand, you have Brussels and the EU Commission now facing having to pay back the COVID recovery fund. So something from, 50 billion euros per year from 2028. So we've got all these kind of opposing forces coming together. So it's going to be very difficult. I think negotiations over the next 12 to 18 months.
Yeah, and you did bring up the point about repaying the debt from COVID. Would you also have a position on this about the political message behind it?
Political message behind it. I'm receiving mixed signals from this effort. The own resources, I will explain you why.
Yeah.
You mentioned the sources, ETS, CBAM, e-waste, excise duties. All these have a diminishing tax base in the future, which means that if the EU succeeds in the policies that ETS and CBAM represents, then the tax return is going to be zero.
Yeah.
Meaning that if we are successful in bringing down our emissions, ETS will have diminishing returns. If we are successful in not importing high carbon products, CBAM will not have any profit. And if we are successful in reducing smoking prevalence, which has been the target for the past 40 years, I don't know, or so, then we will not have any revenue, from the excise duties. So what is the Commission telling us in the end? That we're basing the future of the funding of the European project on diminishing returns. So this is something, temporary, or that, those goals, those policies are never going to be successful, and the tax is going to be there for forever, which is usually what happens with taxes.
Yeah, and you do bring up a point about diminishing returns, which I know we have our economist here who will speak to it shortly. But before we get to that, I want to know if you could speak a bit about the political dynamics in Parliament and what we can expect from the political groups lining up to support it, as well as those who are rejecting it or would reject it.
Well, I think from the centre right to the right of the political spectrum, we've already seen a huge pushback against the original, Commission proposals to blend all the EU funding into one big fund on a national level plans. Certainly on the right, I think there's a huge desire and I think an ambition to protect ring-fenced, common agricultural funding through CAP, cohesion funding, funding for rural development and things like that. So I think already, viewed from a Parliament perspective, that will not be acceptable. That we will have to maintain ring-fenced funding, and I think a lot of the debates haven't gone past that kind of topic at the moment, and it's going to play out over the next 12 months. I'm not sure what those on the left will envisage. Of course, the other big debate will be the size of the EU budget.
Yeah.
What the Commission has proposed, I think, is somewhere around 2 trillion, and I think certainly there will be a pushback on elements of that as we go through the next series of debates in the Parliament.
Yeah, it makes sense. And Dr. Nestoras, could you also add your opinion on the political shaping of the Parliament?
I may sound a little bit bitter, but it comes from a good place. I suppose that the left, the Greens, the Socialists are going to be very happy with the new taxes. Although, again, it comes from the heart. Taxes are not the solution to everything. If it was a solution, we would have plenty of them already. Yeah. Okay, the tax base in Europe has been maxed out. And I say this also from the perspective of a small business owner or freelancer. Okay, so we have been disadvantaging European industries and the European people with all sorts of taxation this year. It's not the Commission that is responsible for this, it's a national competence. So just inventing new ways of taxing, eventually, first it's going to be the companies who pay. That's true, but eventually this is going to be relayed to the people. And yeah, as a member of that great European people, I say that we cannot take any more taxes. Enough is enough.
Yeah, please, if you can also add a point.
I think there was a sense of disbelief when the Commission's proposals came out that one of the own resources proposed was a tax on corporate income. This is the same Commission that's supposed to be involved in a simplification, reducing bureaucracy campaign, ending over regulation. So it makes absolutely no sense. I think what it shows is that the EU Commission is really running out of options when it comes to own resources. There were, own resources were proposed in 2021. I think 2023, it's gone nowhere. So it just shows kind of now that the debate has moved on to another scale of panic, I think, in the Parliament.
Okay.
So there are other solutions. Because I made a direct hit to the socialists, there's also another solution that comes from joint borrowing, potentially not to spend money wherever, but joint borrowing to support innovation, investment, infrastructure, this kind of growth support. And this is where the center-right is mostly negative. But as a good European, I like compromises. I believe that we can find a way to move forward, even though I am kind of disappointed that the MFF is not as ambitious as we would expect under the circumstances. Again, it's a multi-level game here. There are a lot of actors in play and a lot of factors, a lot of dynamics. But it's a matter of survival also for Europe and for its people.
So on that point, because you did bring up that you would see businesses would be absorbing these costs as well as citizens. So if you could maybe speak a bit more, how would you see that in practical terms of the taxing base starting to have impact on businesses and citizens?
I think it's widely accepted in the literature, and maybe the professor
Yeah,
can
we can
correct
also
me.
get the professor's point on this.
That in the end, the taxes are related to the relayed, to the final end user.
The end user, yeah.
The consumer, the people, the voters. This is who are going to pay. But there is also a hidden dimension there, which is that on top of everything else, we are disadvantaging our own companies towards the global competition. And therefore, we have to think about it. Even on all sectors that you mentioned, energy-intensive industries for ETS and CBAM, manufacturers for e-waste taxation, even the tobacco industry for the excise duties. And if the public health is the goal there. I mean, there are also other ways to think about that. At least they can differentiate between the smoke-free products and traditional combustible cigarettes, which belong to the museum, basically.
Yeah.
But there are other ways to regulate this kind of potential revenue.
It's a very confused set of proposals at the moment in terms of the own resources proposals, and it doesn't speak to any great overarching strategy. At least in my mind.
And thanks. That's a perfect segue for us to also bring in our economist, so Professor Pinto Hernández. If we are to take a look at this as a public finance package, would you say that this is robust enough or perhaps strategic enough for the long-term EU budget?
Yes, from my point of view, I think the package's main strength is that it broadens the European Union's revenue base and links financing to policy priorities such as, for example, you were talking about public health and sustainability too. However, from an restricted public finance perspective, its long-term robustness is limited. Several proposed instruments relied on fragile, volatile, or even declining tax bases. That this is the debate here. Why we are talking all the time in Europe about tax rates, and we are not focused on give incentives to increase the tax bases. That is the question here, and some are highly regressive in many cases. Introducing new levies during a period of weak growth, rising insolvencies, and competitive pressures may also be pro-cyclical and burdensome for households and firms. Then politically, the package increased fiscal centralization at a time when we know that many member states are protective of national autonomy, which may complicate acceptance. Overall, the intention is unstable of this package, but this mix does not constitute, from a technical point of view, a fully stable foundation for a long-term European Union budget.
So, and you did bring up exactly as a point from Dr. Nestoras as well, that some of these reliances are on potential revenue streams which will diminish over time, or I guess if they're not successful, they will maintain, which is another maybe existential question that we could pose to the EU. So, but indeed, if the tax works as intended and consumption drops, say for products that are meant to be discouraged, such as tobacco, how would the EU manage with this counterproductive nature of the budget? I'll give it first to our professor, and then I'd love to as well bring it back here to the studio.
Okay. How revenue is the crucial question here. How revenue is raised is crucial. And then instruments that increase regulatory uncertainty, administrative complexity of or the cost of essential goods are less compatible with the European Union's competitiveness and investment goals. Some proposed resources may unintentionally raise marginal costs for companies, discourage investment, or widen socioeconomic disparities. Then, by contrast, revenue sources that are predictable, that are proportionate, coherent across member states, and do not heavily distort consumption or production decisions are more aligned with long-term growth. That's one of the points here. In short, I think some resources are far more compatible with the European Union innovation and competitive ambitions than others. Then that is something that we have to put on the debate too. When we are talking about when we have objectives that are considered by the main informs and reports that we have on the table now to discuss about productivity or competitiveness. I don't know if I'm answering the question, but okay.
Yeah, I think you bring up some of the more, I guess, considerations that the EU needs to have on this. But indeed, Dr. Drea, Dr. Nestoras, if you can also speak on the productivity or counterproductivity of this.
I'm more concerned about stability and credibility, the long-term foundation of the European project. I mean, this is what we're talking about, right?
Yeah.
Own resources to fund further integration.
Correct.
So this is also to say that I'm not against own resources. I believe it's absolutely necessary. And it needs to be a combination and a mix of revenue streams. I wouldn't rule out joint borrowing as well, but again, it's a mix of things. But if you look at every single revenue stream separately, you have CBAM, for example, is essentially a tariff.
Yes.
Import tariff. Okay, it's supposed to be working only if other regions in the world and other nations also introduce their own CBAM. Otherwise, it's just creating a disadvantage for the European economy. The same goes for ETS. The same goes for the e-waste. It's you cannot rely on that for the long term. That's why I said it's a mixed message. You're trying to create a long-term stability, a long-term financial funding, for the European project. This is not the way to do it. It's unstable and unsustainable.
Yeah.
And I think it's also, unfortunately, the EU seems determined to repeat the mistakes that member states have made, which is we're in a very low growth environment, and what the EU is proposing are extra taxes on business, extra environmental taxes, and extra taxes on consumers. It doesn't speak to me of a clear economic strategy. It more speaks to me of kind of this panic that's now beginning, the realization that, for the first time ever, that the EU itself has to repay 40 or 50 billion euros per year from 2028. And to me, this is just like groping in the dark
grabbing at straws.
of what they thought would be the low-hanging fruit and that they might be able to get through. But I don't think it's going to happen.
I mean, even the raising it further, the tobacco excise, it's going to be, I think that's the experience so far. Probably they will get less taxes because of that, because there's going to be an explosion of illicit
black market.
trade. Black market.
Absolutely,
Market trade.
So we have to be very careful in balancing the whole mix of revenue streams.
Yeah, and Professor, please speak on that. Yeah.
Yes, and I think we have to take into account also what are going to be the main consequences that we are going to have directly on society, not only on consumers, because in the most realistic expectation is majority of levy will be passed to consumers, resulting in higher retail prices. And for businesses, for example, I think these instruments will increase compliance cost and regulatory complexity, that this is going to be translated in less competitiveness, and also that is going to be like a constraint for productivity that is not going to allow to get economic growth in medium and long term. And that is something that we have to take into account. You were talking also about tobacco. Tobacco-related revenue is inherently unstable as long-term financing source. Then the underlying tax base is designed to shrink as when public health policies succeed and consumption declines, revenue declines with it. Then we know that from the economic literature, this makes the income stream both decreasing and difficult to forecast, and that is something that we have to put also on the debate table in Europe.
Yes, and it is the buzzword of competitiveness in the EU, which you've also mentioned in this discussion. So when this proposal package lands in the Council, what should we expect from finance ministers? What do we see as the EU's ability to modernize its budget on a tax base that potentially has diminishing returns?
Well, I think at the very start we're going to see, and we've probably started to see it already, we've seen a lot of like political posturing. So we're going to see a lot of countries say, yes, we need, more competitiveness, we need to achieve our objectives, but we're not going to increase our national contributions into the EU budget. Thus, making the own resources debate even more important. Thus, it will bring back the debate about joint borrowing. So we're going to see these processes are notoriously kind of divisive every 7 years. But I do think that probably our ability to gain a compromise has lessened somewhat over the last 7 years because of the spectrum of voices now that will be heard around the European Council table, because unanimity is required. So it's going to be very difficult.
Absolutely.
Very quickly, and to put it very simply, what we're going to see in the Council is the Commission said that they want to increase own resources, and the Council is going to ask, some of the Council members are going to say, okay, so we don't have to increase our national contributions, so you will pay from the own resources, and the other half of the Council will think that this is, an opportunity also to receive more. Right. The usual north-south divide in some kind of configuration is going to be there as well. That's why I said also in the beginning, there is mixed signal. We don't know exactly what the strategy is. Is it long-term stability? Yes. Is it something because we need the money right now, so let's do it?
Yes, that's the question of the expectations, that we are not thinking about what are going to be the consequences and what is going to be the exact strategy that you are going to follow in the medium term, because you cannot only be thinking about, I need resources, then as I need resources, I'm only thinking about taxes without but forgetting what are going to be the main objectives that you have to follow in order to get this economic growth in short term and in medium term, that is competitiveness and productivity. That is one of the main questions that we have to be talking about. We need a strategy, a forecastable future, because in another way, I think we are giving confused information for society.
Or at least clarity. I agree. Yeah. I agree with you. Or at least to have clarity. So we know these measures here are taken because we want in the short term to cover the loan, the common loan that we have to finance the debt, or this is taken because the member states have problems, pressures on their national budgets, and so we want to support them, to help them, or to at least not to increase, at least to be absolutely certain about what is that they're trying to fix with this taxation.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you for your contributions on this. And here at the Watcher Post EU, we're building a platform to have stakeholder views as well as analysis on the implications of policy, precisely as you brought it up, which brings me to my conclusion. If this package is indeed the first step toward a more self-financing European Union, what is one message or even question, as you brought it up, you would want to send to policymakers who are shaping these negotiations? I'll start with you, Doctor.
Yeah, thank you. No, I'll be brief. I think it's going to be very important. The debates are going to be very divisive, but I think we need a more honest debate about all the options that are available. As Antonia said earlier, it's going to have to be a mixture of everything. And I think we need to be very careful when it comes to issues like joint borrowing, because we've had the EU COVID Recovery Fund, which to my mind has not been a huge success, which is like the opposite to what the European Commission are saying. But we're here in 2025, late 2025 now. All the money has not even been dispersed. About 80% of the money went to 3 EU countries. So there was huge, really structural, problems. Yes, exactly, with that fund. So I would say we need a more honest appraisal of the EU COVID Recovery Fund before we talk about any more joint borrowing as part of the new MFF program.
Great. What?
Very simply, taxation policy is also industrial policy. Taxation policy is also social policy, and will have severe effects on the European economy and the European people, and should be decided with the people and the economy and the industry in mind. We are under pressure. We are fighting for our survival in the global competition right now. We cannot disadvantage our industry any further. And of course, I don't have to tell anyone that the people are suffering too.
Yeah, as well. And Professor?
Yes, only in one sentence. I think taxation is not a solution in terms of thinking about long-term economies. The development of society is not focused on how to solve a problem that we have now in terms of revenues or resources, but we have to think about the future, and to think about the future and to think about competitiveness is a question of give facilities to companies, facilities to the industry, to have advantages respecting to another industries from another parts of the world, then that is not a question to increase taxes. It's a question to give incentives to the people that is part of the tax basis for being productive to develop this economic growth in the medium and long term.
Well, thank you very much to my guests. It was a very quick but also poignant discussion. And as well, thank you to my audience for joining for this session. And we hope to enjoy you in future episodes of The Watcher Post.